Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're excited to have you guys here once again. We are here, Historically Black Sense and Morris Brown presents the Rise, um, the hard reset to the rise of research. And we're super excited to have you guys here. We're super excited to have these beloved alum here to have amazing conversation around the academic excellence of Morris Brown. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you guys for being here. I know you got some powerful individuals, so being here is we don't take that lightly. Before we go into, I want to introduce myself. I'll be the host, Archie Clay III. And we can go start to my right, which would be Miss Mason. If you would like to please introduce yourself, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Good afternoon, Sandra Mason. I am a graduate of the class of 1979. I am a retired educator, and presently I am a consultant for various organizations.
Awesome, amazing. Mr. Kemp.
Yes, I'm David Kemp. I'm a 1973 graduate. I was in the first dual degree program of students at Morris Brown, and I went to Georgia Tech and Morris Brown at the same time. And I graduated in 73, and instead of becoming an engineer, I became a banker, where I was a banker for almost 20 years. And for the last 30 years, I've owned my own consulting firm called Bankers Management Incorporated. And I travel the country working with problem banks so they don't go out of business. And also we have a training division where we train lending officers around the country in about 35 states. We're the principal trainers. And I currently serve as a trustee along with Ms. Mason at Morris Brown College. We're on the board of trustees. And I'm also a trustee at the Graduate School of Banking at SMU in Dallas as a trustee there. I'm supposed to be retired, but I think my wife was not happy with me being at home. So I'm semi-retired now. As I get feedback, don't you have somewhere to go? So I am going some places sometimes.
And last but not least.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me as a part of this podcast. I'm Dr. Joy Jackson Guilford. I'm a graduate of the class of 1990, Morris Brown College, biology major. Went on to pursue my master's and doctorate at Florida A&M University. I am in the pharmaceutical industry. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for 26 years, and my current employer for 18 of those years. I currently lead our division called Diversity, Hiring, and Enablement within AbbVie. We're a biopharmaceutical company. And within that division, our role is we're responsible for ensuring that we're bringing resources and enabling our company to ensure they have a diverse pipeline of individuals to select for different roles. And I do that by partnering with historically Black colleges and universities like Morris Brown College, Hispanic serving institutions, as well as we participate in diverse conferences as well.
So first of all,
I'm also on the board of trustees with Ms. Mason and Mr. Kemp as well.
Amazing. We got some powerful individuals. I got some powerful individuals on the board of trustees. So we know Morris Brown it has a strong and powerful future ahead. So, but first and foremost, thank you guys for being here. I think it's always how I would like to call you guys as OGs. It's always important to have individuals like yourself that are very powerful in their careers, right? Especially for someone like me. I graduated 2012, so I always look and always in amaze of the individual that come before me and the power that they have had in their own right. And for me, I'm always curious before we kind of go into the academics, what brought you to Morris Brown? Right. I'm always curious. I know you guys have a very long resume of all the amazing things that you guys have done, but what got you to Morris Brown? Like, I'm curious to understand that journey, and then from there we'll kind of go more into the academics of Morris Brown on that end. But if Miss Mason, you could pop us off with that question, that'll be greatly appreciated.
Okay, yeah, there were many things that brought me to Morris Brown. In particular, people. I had teachers and mentors. I have family members who attended Morris Brown, and people in my community where I grew up. attended Morris Brown, and I started my early years in the Atlanta University Center. In fact, I was born right there at Griffin and what was then Hunter Street. So I was very familiar with the Atlanta University Center, had relatives who attended other schools within the Atlanta University Center. But more specifically, I had two, I'll call them mentors. One of them was a high school teacher, and then the other was one that I worked with. And they always spoke so highly of Morris Brown. And they really sought me out, told me that this would be a good fit for me, talked so well about the school in terms of their experiences there and what it had to offer. And I was a little lukewarm at first because I thought I wanted to go somewhere farther away from home. But once they pushed me, I looked into it, and I, of course, applied. And from there is history. Once I stepped foot onto that campus, I was sold.
Amazing.
So
Let me ask you a question. What was that? You said it once you stepped on the campus. What was that? What did that energy feel like for you?
Oh, wow. I think it's the culture and the climate of Morris Brown. Of course, yes, I had instructors who believed in me and pushed me. But more than that, it was the fellow Brownites who were there. In particular, the upperclassmen. They were savvy, they were smart, they were intentional and very impressive with their leadership. And I was really floored just how smart they were and what leaders they were. At that time, of course, there was an organization where there was an AUC, basically an AUC student council. And in fact, one of my classmates went on to become the first president from Morris Brown. But you had people in the Atlanta University Center at that time like Spike Lee and Edwin Moses. And in fact, it was right on the heels of Edwin Moses having come back from the Olympics. So that energy, not to even speak of the band and the programs, the education department, the business department, and as Joy mentioned, the science department. And there was just a spirit of excellence that motivated you. But also it was very, when you consider the fact that it was 7 years after the death of Martin Luther King. So we were politically active as well. All of those things really just sold me and made me know that I was in the right place.
Amazing. I'm excited now to have this conversation. The knowledge, I can feel the knowledge and the information is about to come off here. So I'm just super excited. So Mr. Kim, you mind answering the question for me as well?
Sure. I guess I was not as intentional. I was a pretty decent student in high school, but I grew up in a very poor background. Part of my life, I lived in Perry Home Housing Project, and it really not considered going to college that much, though I was interested in science. And a senior year in high school, I had one of the counselors ask where I planned to go to college. And I said, well, I really hadn't thought about it much. And they said, gee, you should. As a matter of fact, there's an exam being given at Spelman. Georgia Tech is starting a program with the AU Center. And next Saturday, if you want to go to that program, we'll sign you up. And if you score well enough, you might win one of a couple of scholarships. And that's how I got to go to college. I'd signed a football scholarship, and I didn't really want to play football. I was real skinny then, but I was going to go because I did want to go to school. And I had a choice at any school in the AU Center. I could pick any one of the three schools, Morehouse, Clark, or Morris Brown. And of course, Morehouse was eliminated because it was all male. And when I got over to Morris Brown, quite frankly, the scenery was amazing. And my first two roommates were seniors. And the way they treated me was amazing, that welcoming into the group, it was a chance for a very young, shy man to grow. And there were opportunities for leadership. And I think among many things, Sears, I worked for Sears part-time when I went to Morris Brown. And Sears had a strike of its Black employees around 1971. And the store I worked at was up in Buckhead. And for some reason, I was a part-time 20-year-old college student. That's the Black employees at the store elected me to represent them in a negotiation, which was led by Hosea Williams. And there was a settlement discussion that was held in Fountain Hall with the president of Sears, the executive management team, and Hosea Williams and a group of us. And we spent an entire night with Dr. John Middleton, who was president of Morris Brown, moderating and facilitating. And at the age of 19 to 20, I got to participate in a settlement of a major labor strike. And it was life-changing in terms of seeing how people operate and how they do things. And and out of that, the president of Sears and I became very close friends, a guy named A.D. Swift. At that time, he was regional VP of Sears, and he was later promoted to president of Sears and moved to Chicago. So for me, it was life-changing to meet somebody at that young age, participate in very serious discussions in a labor discussion that I think elevated my own development quite a bit. And I think the fact that Dr. Middleton was a big believer in student empowerment. For example, the Student Government Association, my junior year, I was president of the SGA, and we got a budget, and if I remember, it's $35,000 that we controlled, and we were responsible for entertaining students. And we did all of the negotiations with different groups to appear. And Morris Brown was the center of Black entertainment in Atlanta. We invited. I know when Isaac Hayes was a hit with Shaft, he came to play with our marching band, which was the best band in the world at that time. And I remember negotiating with the Delphonics to sing at the old Herndon Stadium. I called down to Tuskegee to Lionel Richie and the fellows at that time to be the opening act for them, and they wanted $2,200. I told them nobody had ever heard of them, the Commodores, and nobody would pay you $2,200. Well, I'll give you $1,000. They said, "Man, we got 9 people in the band. We can't come for $1,000. We have to feed these guys." I tell you what, I'll talk to the head of the dining room. And I hired the Commodores. I went up to $1,200, hired the Commodores for $1,200, and I had to throw in a meal in the dining hall. So those experiences, I guess, give you unique insight into potential, your leadership ability. And Morris Brown is kind of a fabric of the kind of person I've become.
That's amazing. Of course, last but not least, Dr. Guilford, if you don't mind, answer that same question as well. And then we'll kind of go on to the next question.
Sure, Archie, and thank you. I love telling this story because it's part of my testimony. And so I just want to share, early on, I knew I wanted to attend an HBCU. My mom was a graduate of Albany State. And so I shared with my mom and dad that I wanted to go to an HBCU. I was born and raised in South Georgia. So most of my classmates wanted to go to Valdosta State or one of the, surrounding schools. But I was very adamant that I wanted to attend an HBCU. So they were very crystal clear. My parents were, that if that was the case, then I needed to work very hard to get scholarship money to ensure that I had the opportunity to attend an HBCU. So my senior year, I had applied to a few HBCUs. I did get accepted to both Spelman and FAMU, and received partial scholarships at both of those. And so my mom said, okay, there's another career fair or college fair at the Valdosta Mall. Let's go one more time and see who we meet. And so we went to Valdosta Mall to that fair, and I met the Colonel Tyrone P. Fletcher. He was one of the greats when it came to recruiting for Morris Brown College. And as I sat and shared with him and talked to him about, and he looked at my transcript and all of that, he said, listen, he's like, where have you been accepted? And I told him. He said, are they giving you full scholarships? I was like, no, partial scholarships. And he said, okay, if I tell you that I can give you a full scholarship to Morris Brown College, will you come? And I said, I will absolutely be there. And so for the next 2 weeks, he and I worked together with the application, completed applications for scholarships. And I didn't know, but they were at my senior awards day at my high school. And so at the high school, they were giving out awards to all of these different seniors. And the story is told that Colonel Fletcher, along with Dr. Perry Simmons, who was the main funder of my scholarship, they looked at each other and said, okay, we know what we have to do. And so they got up and they announced my scholarship. And it was the highest scholarship that was ever received or even provided for any student at Cook High School in Adel, Georgia ever. And so I still have the newspaper clipping of it because it was a big deal. Everybody was cheering, and it was just a lot of excitement around it. But I felt it was a true blessing and I felt like I spoke that blessing into existence as a sophomore in high school because I said I wanted to go to HBCU. My parents said I needed to get the scholarship money. I prayed about it. And voila, I got the scholarship money. So that's how I stepped foot on Morris Brown College. And when I got there, I was a biology major. Dr. Durje told my dad, don't worry, I will be her dad on campus from now on. And so my parents felt that I was in great hands. I was in very good hands. As Sandra said, the environment, the culture, all of it was just so becoming. And so I felt like this was a place that I could actually thrive. And I actually did thrive at Morris Brown College.
That's amazing. I think that's also a testament just for like the energy of manifestation and the energy of knowing where you're supposed to be, right? God always has a true journey for us, right? Or where we're supposed to be, regardless of what comes in our way. It's really about us just listening, right? Listening to what God is telling us, and He's gonna push us and move us in the right direction. Right. And that's kind of what I'm getting where I see is like a lot of the things that you guys have been saying is just relationships, energy, culture, just the experience, right? So my question now kind of really goes into, I know you guys are very successful in you guys' careers. What was the foundation from an academic perspective of kind of pushing you towards that perspective? Did where you are now, was that where you thought you would be as a freshman going into biology and going into everyone's different perspectives, or did it change? I know a lot of times, even for myself, I was a business major. Now I'm an entrepreneur. And I learned so much after I graduated, those 5 years of being in retail and operations and learning about the business that really pushed me towards my career. Right. So I'm curious to know, as far as you guys being freshmen and sophomores, the education that you got at that time, was it preparing you for your future, or did you have a couple pivots along the way? And we can start with Dr. Guilford.
So it did prepare me because I'm still in the science aspect of my career. I always wanted to be a doctor. That's what I shared in the yearbook in senior in high school. Right. I wanted to be a doctor. And so originally I had planned to be an MD. What I loved about Morris Brown, they had so many programs that were available for science students. And so there was one program with Boston University School of Medicine. It was an early medical school selection program. And I remember it very well, Dr. Durje. And at that time, there was a virus going around on campus. And Dr. Durje was like, okay, I want you to apply for this medical school program. And I was sick. And I was like, well, I'm not feeling well. And so just to show you how much our professors poured into us, he came over to my dorm room while I was sick. He sat at my typewriter and he asked me the questions. I gave him the answers and he typed up that application. It was a very rigorous process. We had interviews. I had several interviews at Boston University School of Medicine. I, along with some other students from the Atlanta University Center for Morehouse and Spelman, were also interviewing at that time. But I did get accepted into that program as a sophomore. So I was already admitted into medical school. And so it was a great program overall. And many of the biology students took advantage of it. However, as I was going every summer to Boston University School of Medicine, and I did a rotation with an oncologist, I realized, maybe I'm not emotionally cut out to be an MD. But Dr. Durje and what Morris Brown did for me, they prepared me either way. So I was also doing research, not only at Clark College at the time, but also at Morehouse School of Medicine. And so although I decided I didn't want to be an MD, the research that I was doing was very appealing to me. And so I asked Dr. Cyril Moore was the advisor at the time at Morehouse School of Medicine. And I asked him, what is this research called that I'm doing? And he said, it's called pharmacology. And so that's why I did the pivot. I decided I was going to grad school instead. I took what the students call now a gap year. I took a gap year, took the GRE, and then I started grad school at FAMU. And that's where I got my master's in pharmaceutical sciences and went on to get my PhD in pharmacology toxicology. So Morris Brown definitely provided that foundation. Just to tell you a quick story. So we get to FAMU and we're asked to develop a curriculum vitae. And that's your CV of all of your work, your research work you've done. And so there's a student from Florida State that's also with me in the same program. And so they gave us a sheet of paper and they wanted us to write down all of our research work, internships. And I was writing because I had all of these opportunities at Morris Brown. She wrote one thing and she was done. So she looked over at me. She said, "You're still writing?" I was like, "Yeah, I got a lot of experience at Morris Brown." And she was like, "Wow, I wish I would have had those same experiences as you had." So Morris Brown prepared me not only for graduate school, but also prepared me beyond graduate school because I already had experiences that I could put on a CV that I was already internship ready in graduate school. Right. And so it was just a great experience overall. And that's why I talked about earlier about the science programs because they were top notch.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Amazing thing to hear. Because a lot of times you don't hear, a lot of times, just be very transparent, some people, parents may be thinking HBCUs are not preparing us for the future. And we disagree with that, right? We are very, very prepared and very ready, right, for our career path and for tackling the world because we learn so much, not even just from an academic perspective, but from culture, from being able to pivot, to be able to deal with certain situations, certain issues. That's all preparation, right? To be able to hit the ground running, to be able to tackle the world and really be great, in the things that we do. Mr. Kim,
and Archie, I want to add something really quickly.
Yes, go ahead.
And I want to add this because a lot of students deal with this. They attend an HBCU and they're trying to decide where to go to grad school, right? And people are told, no, you've had your HBCU experience. Now you need to go to PWI. That's what they're saying. Everybody's saying you need to go to PWI. That's what they were telling me. Same thing. So I did apply to PWIs. However, that year, FAMU had graduated the most Black PhDs in pharmacology in history than any other school. So I'm like thinking to myself, okay, why am I going to PWI? FAMU has the program. They've graduated all these people. And I said all that to say I work for a Fortune 100 company. So it's not the school that you go to, it's what you do with the degrees that you have. And so for any student who's thinking, oh, I can't go to a PWI now, I have to go to a PWI for grad school, you don't have to, because it's what you do at that school, which is the thing that's going to actually follow you.
No, I think that's a very, very valid point. I think we've been told that, right? Even now, right? we're told, and I've had my thought process said sometimes, but you're definitely true because we're thought that, hey, we got an HBCU experience and we want to be competitive within the market, we want to compete with these individuals, we need to go to these PWI. I guess you have that bigger perspective, right? And to your point is about how you interact and how you build your culture for yourself and how you impact your degree, So I think that's a valid point. Mr. Kim, I'd love to hear your perspective and your answer as well.
For me, it was the diversity of the education. Because there were only 2 students at Morris Brown on the dual degree program, our advisor was at Morehouse. And I took probably 50% of my classes at Morehouse because the professors from Georgia Tech would come to Morehouse and teach the classes. But even though I was a science major, engineering major, I do remember taking a world religion class, Dr. Blakely. It was a very difficult class because I was switching from one side of your brain as an engineer, mathematician, and you're going over to the other side. And the fact that you could go to classes all over the AU Center and interact with people from all over. For me, it was a general education. I had no idea I'd go into banking. That was a surprise. But I was prepared when I got there because the basic understanding of math in graduate school, when I took finance classes, I always did very well because I had a solid foundation there. And I think maybe the most important thing is that degree of confidence you receive. What Morris Brown did for me was a confidence I could compete with anybody. And as I travel around the world, I was in corporate finance at Citibank at the time, doing mergers and acquisitions and a lot of international banking. I was doing deals in Saudi Arabia and around the world. And I never felt out of place or not prepared. There was a level of confidence in my career. I was getting promoted fairly quickly, and I was kind of pacing ahead of my peer group in terms of promotions. And there was just this absolute belief that I could learn and do anything. And I think that when I've been given an opportunity for training, for example, I was very comfortable with new ideas and the concept of learning something new. And I think also the campus life at Morris Brown was a real plus for me, because after class, you learned a lot and you got to meet all kinds of people. I'll give you a funny story. I grew up in Atlanta, but I didn't know anything about drugs, for example. I'd read books about people smoking marijuana, and I was in the dormitory, and one of my dorm mates was from the West Coast. And I'd walk by his room in the dorm, and I'd said to one of the guys, "This guy smokes the stinkingest cigarettes I've ever smelled." And they looked at me and all burst into laughter. "You are so dumb. That's marijuana." So I knocked on his door, and I said, "Hey, I want to try that." And I took one puff, and I go, "Well, nothing happened. I didn't see any dancing angels or whatever. This is stupid. Why would people do this?" It was amazing to me, the diversity of people. One of the guys in our dorm had been a Black Panther in Detroit. And I've known people who were in the Panthers, and we talked a lot. We were in that age where we were going to solve all the world's problems, because everything ended with a man. The man had a plan. We get to fight the man. And being at that time, one of the interesting things, it was right in the heart of the Black Power movement in the late 60s when I got there in 69. Sororities and fraternities had dwindled at Morris Brown considerably. I think all the HBCUs. But for some reason, my class, and when we were all turned sophomores, there was this rush to pledge. As a matter of fact, if I recall, there was one Kappa on campus. Now, you got to remember, we had 2,800 students. We had one Kappa on campus at the time, and all the fraternities and sororities had dwindled. But my class, for that, and people who played policy, it was just, everybody was online. It was just huge lines. If I remember, the Delta and AKA lines were 50 plus people online. The Sigmas had about 25 people. The Kappas had about 25. The Alphas had about 35. And my line, I'm an Omega. We had the smallest line. We only had 10, and that was the smallest line pledging. And it was like a resurgence of Greek letter service organizations, which occurred right in the middle of the Black Power movement, which was very interesting to me that phenomenon occurred at that time, because it was not in fashion, but it was all part of that development that you got here. And things, for example, homecoming. My biggest impression of Morris Brown my freshman year was how important homecoming was. And you'd go out behind the dorm and people were decorating floats. And you'd be up all night. There's fires and 55-gallon drums to keep you warm. And people are decorating floats, and how important the band was. I didn't know about Morris Brown's band. But that first year, watching the band come out of the hole at Old Herndon Stadium was a real life-changing. And back then, we had a freshman tradition. We wore beanies. And you had to wear your beanie through the Thanksgiving Day game, which was a Clark game, Clark football game. And at that football game, you got to take your beanies off. It was an initiation, I guess. You got to take your beanie off. And it was very interesting to me, the closeness and sense of family and camaraderie and brother and sisterhood that people had on the campus. It was a very close campus, even though we were the largest school in the AU Center at the time. The closeness of the student body was just amazing to me, and it was. And I'm older than my siblings, so I didn't grow up with my siblings. They were much younger than me and my half brothers and sisters. So it was kind of like I would grow up alone, and then all of a sudden I'm with a group of people that are very close knit. So for me, the academics were solid, and I knew they were solid when I got out of Morris Brown and had to compete with people from all kinds of schools, and I could judge my preparedness versus those people. Then I knew, and the confidence was not fake. It was a real confidence born of success. So that's I wish I'd been as smart as Dr. Guilford. I was not that good a student, but I struggled through, and as they say, I didn't graduate cum laude. I think I graduated thank you Lordy. So I was blessed.
Listen, listen, you made it. That's all that matters at the end of the day. That's all that matters. Miss Mason, I would love to hear your story as well.
Yeah, so for me, I was an education major while at Morris Brown, early childhood education. And very interesting, that's not where I ended up. But I like to kind of say it like this. Morris Brown, the instructors, they saw me. So as a result of my general psychology class I had with Dr. Jeannie Stahl, she saw something in me. And she invited me to join a group called the Young Women in Science. As Joy talks about, the science program at Morris Brown was a very strong program, but I was an education major. Initially, I didn't even plan to be an education major upon coming to Morris Brown. I wanted to be a journalist. And then I found out I would have to take basically all of my classes at Clark because they had a communication program. So I did pivot, and I decided to major in early childhood education. But as a result of taking that general psychology class with Dr. Jeannie Stahl, she invited me to the Young Women in Science. And so these were all mostly upperclassmen, and they were going to be MD, psychiatrists, or psychologists. And in fact, all of those that I know of during that time, they did go on to become just that, psychologist or psychiatrist. So fast forward, I had another class that was educational psychology. And I started to hear a lot about psychometrics and standardized testing and how Black students didn't fare as well on standardized tests. And that really just kind of piqued my interest. And so I graduated in 1979 in May. In August, I entered graduate school at Georgia State University. At that time was the school psychometry program that later became the school psychology program. So as a result of that interest, and like I said, I really credit the instructors and people like that who saw you. One of the other things that is an example of the way that they saw you, sometimes they saw things in you that you didn't see in yourself. So it wasn't a matter of having to prove yourself. You didn't have to prove that you belonged, that you were college material, even if you were not making all of the grades. But right. There was a program at the time that Morris Brown and Morehouse were the only schools in the Atlanta University Center who participated in this program. And this program was a weekend at Ohio State University where they invited minority students from across the country, all the schools across the country, and for an opportunity for a scholarship at Ohio State University for graduate school. And so Morris Brown was the school that had the resources. We actually had a van, and I think one of the coaches, it might have been Coach Head, who drove us to Ohio to the program. We spent the weekend there. They rolled out the red carpet. But the guys from Morehouse, they were all business majors, and they rode in the van with us because they did not have transportation. For Morris Brown, we had a diverse group. There were education majors, there were business majors, and I think there were 5 of us, and there were 5 guys from Morehouse as well. But my understanding prior to me and even years after my time, Morris Brown and Morehouse were the only schools within the Atlanta University Center who had that program. I didn't get the scholarship, but one of my classmates did get the scholarship and did go on to attend graduate school at Ohio State University. Again, as it comes to my career, I did start off as a teacher. I was still in graduate school. I was teaching, and I taught for about 10 years. And I had earned my degree by then, my master's in school psychology. And I was pushed by someone in the school system saying, I heard that you have a degree in school psychology and we need another psychologist to serve the system. And I really wasn't interested. In fact, I was pregnant because once I finished that program, it was so rigorous. It was a place where you had to prove yourself at Georgia State. Right. There were only 2 schools in the state of Georgia at that time that had a school psychology program. And I think that was Valdosta State University of Georgia and Georgia State, and later on Valdosta State. So it was a very rigorous program, but I think it was, as David said, the confidence I had in myself and my skills that I learned at Morris Brown. I knew that I could do it. There were other students who, it was such a rigorous program. It was such a matter of proving yourself from other institutions. I remember there was a young lady with me who had finished West Georgia. And she said, I can't do it. I'm quitting. I said, no, do not quit. I begged her not to quit. I said, I don't care if I never test one student. I never practiced psychology one day as a psychologist. I am going to finish this program. And I was working full time. And it took me a few years to get my master's there. But then eventually I did, after about 10 years as a teacher, I did go become a school psychologist in the school system. And I did that about 12 years. I went on to become an assistant principal at a school, a blue ribbon school, one of the top schools in the country. And again, it's interesting for people to see you, to see the confidence and your skill set. And I only did that a few years. And then at the end of my career, I became assistant director for student support services, where I had 5 programs under me. I was the only person in my position for 100,000 students in our school system. So it is that confidence. It is, and again, not only my instructors, but I observed other students. My first semester at Morris Brown, I did not make the honor roll. And that was a big deal at Morris Brown. You would see these, students, they had on their black dresses, they were going to convocation, and my roommate made the honor roll. And I thought, what in the world? This will never happen again. This will never happen again. And so from that point on, I also had to push myself. It wasn't,
right.
It was challenging, but also it was rewarding. And I was confident. It wasn't that I felt like I could not do it. And I
right.
never looked back after that point. But it was also noticing what other students were doing. At Morris Brown, they had standards.
Right.
At that time, we didn't have co-ed visitation. That was something that they did protest for during our time. When someone came to visit you at the dorm, your dorm mother announced on the PA system, you have a gentleman caller, and you visited with that person in the student lounge. We were still expected to attend chapel. On Wednesday nights, we went to chapel. Right. And in fact, we had a curfew. To tell you how strict their standards were, one of my dorm mates missed curfew one night, and she was locked out of the dorm. And she was throwing rocks up, trying to get us to come down and open the door. And we didn't open the door.
Oh, man.
She made her way in. I won't tell you what happened, but our whole dorm, as a result of us not telling what happened, we got put on social probation. They were pledging us then. You're walking around we had to sign in and out of the dorm. We had to go to dinner together as a group. You couldn't speak to other students on campus because the dean was not playing. She said, you all will either tell or you remain on social probation and you will not go home for Thanksgiving.
Right.
So
wow.
Standards, all of that, that was a part of the culture. That was a part of the standards. We were the Gaines Hall girls, and that was one of the oldest. It's a historical dorm that is currently in disrepair, but it was a historical dorm on the campus. And to David's point about relationships, I am still very close to almost everybody that I met probably during my time at Morris Brown. We communicate on a regular basis. My phone starts to ring, or I'm getting messages about March. I'm staying with you for homecoming. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that homecoming continues to incredibly be a big deal at Morris Brown. And people care, and they come from across the country. In fact, some of them from across the world. But it's that culture, it's that environment, it's those expectations, it's the way that they poured into us, that gave us that confidence. And in fact, that love for Morris Brown and that campus.
No, this is amazing. I want to just say, I thought you guys.
Archie, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I share just one quick story with you, Archie?
Yes, please.
This is about the people who were running Morris Brown. I signed up to pledge my sophomore year, and I get this call from Dean Easley. He was the academic dean. He said, "You need to come see me." And I went to his office. It was in the old Student Union building. And he said, "Son, you can't pledge because you have an F." I said, "Dean, I'm on the honor roll. I'm taking advanced calculus, physics. I got A's and B's and all that." He said, "Son, you flunk freshman orientation." Now, at that time, freshman orientation was a pass-fail class. And I may be the only student in the history of Morris Brown to fail freshman orientation. And I said to him, "When did I sign up for that?" I don't remember. I don't. I honestly never remembered registering. I never went to one class. I was pushing myself to get through all these pre-engineering classes and whatever. And he said, "Son, he said, I have never changed a student's grade, and I'm going to change your fail to a pass. And don't you dare ever fail a class at Morris Brown." And I did not. That was my only F in college, was to fail freshman orientation. And by the graces of Dean Easley, he allowed me to pledge, which I was not eligible for because I had failed freshman orientation. And even now, my grandson says, "Pops, how did you fail freshman orientation?" I said, honey, you got to work at it.
Right. Well, no, I want to say this. I love the fact that you guys are very transparent in the stories, and it's always special to hear the OGs tell their stories, and it's clear that, on a serious note, it's clear that the love and the family dynamic of Morris Brown was truly there, right? And still there, right? And of course, as they're building now and they're trying to get it back to that culture and the relevance of what Morris Brown, because I can see the energy and the spirit. I feel like it's coming to me. I feel like I went to Morris Brown for a little bit. You know what I mean? So it's grateful that you guys are able to tell these amazing stories. But the one thing I kind of got away from it is confidence, right? You guys kept saying confidence. You kept saying confidence. And we know that Morris Brown had the academic excellence from the teachers and the presidents and the students, and that energy and that competitive was there. But it all boils down to the confidence that was instilled into you guys to continue to push forward. And even through trials and tribulations and different things that may have come you guys' way, the confidence was given to you guys at Morris Brown allows you to bust through those doors, right? And for my last question to you guys is, how do the students continue to the current students that are there right now, the students that are maybe on the trying to decide they want to come to Morris Brown, as they're rebuilding right now. How do they foster that confidence, and how do they, and what are some words that you would give to them as they triculate through this new journey of Morris Brown and hopefully to be able to pass the same energy that you guys have given to Morris Brown and getting back to you guys as we close out? If we start with Ms. Mason.
I think it's very important. Today, I think there's a kind of school of thought where culture is not as important.
Right.
We all know that at an HBCU, culture is just as important as anything that you can do. So I think in our way that we continue to lead and show as we try to develop that culture. We know that it won't be the same. Things have changed greatly in the 20 plus years that we were not accredited, but I think we have to remain steadfast in in our vision for Morris Brown and stand on the shoulder of what we know Morris Brown has been. As we continue to tell the stories of what Morris Brown has been, some people don't really know Morris Brown prior to Drumline, and Drumline was wonderful, but it was no surprise to us. That's what we were accustomed to as it relates to something like the band. So I think it's incumbent upon us to be really steadfast with that vision for what Morris Brown can be, and that we continue to share that and show that by our own example to the students, to the students who are currently there, as well as the broader community, and continue to tell these stories and don't get tired of them. Be very confident that they matter and that culture matters, in particular on that campus. So I think it's really incumbent upon us who know that, who know that, who've lived that we don't shy away from that and don't allow anyone to make us think that the culture and what we gained at the time that we were matriculating there was not important and cannot ever be again, because certainly large parts of it can be. And that our sustainability.
No, for sure. And I think even to the story that you guys are telling right now, it's rejuvenating for myself, right? I'm far removed from school, but it's definitely rejuvenating to hear these stories and to hear the passion and the history, right? Just as you guys talk through the stories, and it's funny, but it's like, wow, this is something that was happening on you guys' campus, right? The energy and the excellence across the whole board, you know what I mean? So I love it. Mr. Kemp, love to hear your thoughts on, the same question.
I think that I'd like to encourage students to realize that the only limitation to their lives are themselves. I sometimes wonder, and just maybe the old guy screaming, "Get off my lawn." Sometimes I wonder if we have a generation coming along who are tough enough to truly believe in themselves, that they place no limits. And I don't mean artificial chest out kind of untrue bombacity. I mean an actual belief that I can dig in there. Even when I run into difficulties, I will not quit. That drive, as Sandra talked about, being in grad school and the drive needed to get through it. And I hope that Morris Brown continues to have students recognize that there are no limits. The accreditation is back. Even during the period when the accreditation were not there, there were people who went to Morris Brown who have been successful in life. And I think for this incoming, the current students and incoming students, if you want an environment where there are no limits placed on you, but there's a helping hand to help you achieve what you want to achieve. And if you don't ever give up on yourself, there are no limits. Whatever you want to do in life, you can do. And Morris Brown can be a great platform for that. And I just like to have a spirit can do. There's nothing we can't do. I look at the debate team at the school now, how they participate in programs and do very well compared to other colleges. And I think that the pride of success, and one thing I hope that we are able to do on the board of trustees with the three of us being on the board, is the idea that we share accomplishments. It's important. For example, I'm on a trustee at the Graduate School of Banking at SMU in Dallas. One of the things we've just spent a lot of time, money talking about is how do we keep the alumni engaged so that the students have an advantage of interacting with the alumni. And something like this hopefully goes partly that way. But I think that as Morris Brown refines where it's going, bringing in leaders, not necessarily alumni, but leaders in every field to spend time with students talking about get from where they are to where they want to be, and have those students take that to heart, having visiting leaders from business, from academics, from science, whatever the case might, social sciences. I know one of the things I kept asking myself when I was not on the Morris Brown board, is there something we can do better than everybody? Do we need to have a special criminology that we change how criminal justice system works? Because, or is there something, how does Morris Brown relate to the community around Morris Brown? One of the things I hope that happens is that we enhance our community engagement and not just have people who went to Morris Brown as supporters. I like to think of the community around Morris Brown being supporters. All those families that showed up for homecoming parade for mile after mile, those were not all Morris Brown alum. These people, many of them had not finished high school, but they felt a part
of the community.
Morris Brown. And I'd like to pull them back into the family and support structure. And to get there, I think we have to do an outreach to make them feel comfortable supporting us. Thank you.
No, that's something that makes perfect sense. And of course, last but not least, Dr. Guilford, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. I agree with Trustee Kemp about having that can-do spirit. And I will say also what Trustee Mason shared, even though our culture and some things have changed on the campus, it looks different, right? It feels different. The Brownite spirit remains the same.
Still
So
there.
no matter what changes have taken place, that Brownite spirit remains the same. The spirit of ensuring that students have the tools and the resources they need for success. That spirit of preparation is still there to prepare you for success. And so with that being said, I things have changed, but the Brownite spirit has not. And we as alumni, we give back, but I think one other way we can give back is our time to these students. And I'll give you an example. I was at a conference, National Black MBA conference last year. And I heard, and some of them call me Ma, some of them call me Dr. George. All I heard was, Ma, Joy. I was like, who is that? And it was all of the students from Brown College. And that made my heart swell because all of my colleagues saw them run, and that's all my manager talks about, how the students came running and saying, "My Joy, Miss Joy," hey, that they were so excited to see me. And so I just received a text from one this morning saying he received a text from my company. He said, "Is this real?" And so my point is, it's important for us, as you call us, the OGs, to give back to the current students and to share our stories of success.
Right.
So that they will instill that confidence in them, not only that they're receiving from the college itself, but that we can also provide them with a level of support that continues to provide that confidence in them, that they too, the same journey that we've taken, they too can have a successful journey.
No, for sure. Again, thank you guys so much. And I do want to, before we end, I want to say,
sorry.
Go ahead, Ms.
Can I add something to what Joy and both David has said as well? I think something that's very important that we show students, and I'm thinking in particular as we grow our online community as well, that we have to be sure that we have intentionality of our vision, because it's important that we create a sense of belonging and engagement and retention with those students. That is a challenge that we've not had before when we consider an online community. But the intentionality of creating a sense of belonging and sharing with them those stories, as Joy has pointed out, that's very important as well. And in fact, it may be very different the way that we do that as opposed to the way we do it with the students who matriculate in person. But I just wanted to add that.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think I was going to get to the point of Mr. Kemp, is like the thought process of building resilience, right? I think that's something that's very, very important. That's something that I pride myself on and a big advocate for, because I think resilience creates success, right? I think resilience allows for you to, because life is not always successful. Right. I think sometimes we have to pivot to create that success, but also kind of going back to the thought process of seeing God's vision at the same time. Right. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we battle against God's vision of what we're truly supposed to be doing because we don't want to do that. Right. So it's really being steadfast, right, to understanding what that journey is, but also understand that you have to be resilient and be powerful in that change. Right. Because where you started might not be where you end, but that doesn't mean that you're not successful. Right. Absolutely. So I'm a big advocate for it as well, is that we have to be very strong. We have to be very powerful. We have to be very confident in who we are so that people can see that. Right. I can see, even for myself, to see that you guys are very confident. And that honestly adds more value to me to be more confident as far as how I trickle and push forward through my journey. Right. And I think students need to understand that it doesn't happen right then. Right. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen right when you need it to happen. Right. There's a lot of things that happen to prepare you. Honestly, if you're ready for it to happen, you know what I'm saying? Like, God just don't give it to you just because, oh, I'm successful, right? God is giving it to you so he can prepare you for where he wants you to be at the peak, right? I truly believe that we all have the ability to be great at whatever you want to do, right? But to you guys' point, that it starts with being confident in yourself, but it also starts with being resilient in yourself as well. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys so much for being very vulnerable, telling you guys the story. I truly enjoyed the conversation with you guys. It's very, very motivating to me as well. And I'm very grateful that they have 3 amazing trustees on the board to guide Morris Brown to where they should be, right? There is no new, right? You guys already had it, right? It's about finding the balance of now and merging what you guys had in the past together. So I want to say thank you again. And for the individuals that are listening, again, we'll be doing that. Today was Thursday. I just got married, so I just got back from my honeymoon. So that's why we got pushed it to Thursday. So normally it's on Wednesday, every Wednesday. So we're excited to continue to have these amazing conversations, to tell these amazing stories around Morris Brown and the culture that you guys have, the beloved culture and the love of the culture that you guys have, and the love of the culture I have for you guys as well. So again, we're very grateful for you guys, and we look for you guys to tune in next Wednesday. Please tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. The only way this is successful is more people see these conversations, more students see these conversations, more future students see these conversations, and with hopes of motivating and inspiring them to want to be a part of, as you'll say, Morris Brown? Say it one more time, Dr. Joy. What's it? How do you?
Brown Night Spirit? Brown Nights. Absolutely.
Future Brown Nights. So again, please tune in. We greatly appreciate you guys. Please tune in every Wednesday. Historically Black Sense and Morris Brown presents from Reset to Resurgent, and we are excited to have you guys every Wednesday. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys soon. Peace out.
Thank you, Archie, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I just got back last night.